When I arrived at the small acreage that Saturday morning and found Nicole weeping in the kitchen, I knew I'd made the worst mistake of my life. She was standing in front of the sink with her hands submerged in soapy water, her shoulders slumped like she was carrying the weight of the entire world on her back. Her hair, usually so meticulously cared for and styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. The dark circles under her eyes were so deep and pronounced it looked like she hadn't slept properly in weeks, and she was crying silently the way women cry when they don't even have the strength left to make a sound, when the tears just fall without permission. Behind her, in the open-plan living room that connected directly to the kitchen, there were at least 9 people sprawled across the furniture like they owned every inch of the place. There was Devon's mother, Denise, that woman who had looked at me from the very first day we met as if I were nothing more than a temporary obstacle in her path to controlling her son's life. Devon's 2 sisters, Taylor and Morgan, were there with their shrill voices and laughter that sounded less like joy and more like mockery, like they were constantly making fun of someone who wasn't in on the joke. The younger brother Derek was there with his wife, whose name I could never remember, and their 2 children, who were running absolutely wild through the house, completely out of control, knocking things over and screaming at the top of their lungs. Devon's father was sitting in the corner reading a newspaper as if nothing unusual was happening around him. All of them were sprawled on the furniture I'd helped Nicole pick out, demanding coffee in loud voices, asking for more toast, shouting that the orange juice was gone and someone needed to go to the store immediately. And my daughter, my Nicole, was serving them. She was serving every single one of them, as if she were hired help in her own home, as if she had no right to sit down and rest, as if her only purpose was to meet their endless demands. "Nicole, where's the sugar?" one of the sisters yelled without even bothering to look in her direction, her eyes still glued to her phone. "Nicole, these eggs are cold and disgusting. Make me some others," Devon's mother Denise ordered, using a tone that made it clear she expected immediate obedience without question. My daughter moved back and forth between the kitchen and living room like a ghost, like someone who'd forgotten she had a body that could get tired, obeying every command without protest, wiping every plate, enduring every disrespectful comment and demand. And I, standing in the doorway with my purse still on my shoulder, felt rage start to climb from the pit of my 6-7-year-old stomach, a fury so intense it made my hands shake. This was not what I had planned when I bought this place. This was not what I had sacrificed my entire retirement savings for. It had been exactly 2 years since Nicole left her first marriage, a nightmare that had lasted 19 years, with a man who abused her in every way possible, without ever actually laying a hand on her in violence. He ignored her for weeks at a time, giving her the silent treatment as punishment for imagined offenses. He told her constantly that she was useless, that she was good for nothing, that she had ruined his life by trapping him in marriage. When Nicole finally found the courage after nearly 2 decades to ask him for a divorce, he took absolutely everything in retaliation. The house they had bought together, with both their incomes, gone to him. The savings account they'd built over 19 years completely emptied. Even the car I had personally gifted her when she turned 32, he took that too out of pure spite. Nicole arrived at my small apartment in Miami with just 2 suitcases and a soul so shattered I wasn't sure it could ever be put back together. For months and months I watched her walk through my living room like a zombie, completely unsure what to do with her life, unsure how to start over at 45 years old, when she'd spent more than half her adult life with a man who'd destroyed her sense of self-worth. She cried every single night, thinking she had permanently lost her chance to be happy, to maybe have a family if she wanted to have a place of her own, in this world where she felt safe and valued. And I, as a mother, as a woman who had fought my own battles over 67 years of life, decided to do something that might have been foolish but felt absolutely necessary. I had saved $5,800 over the course of my life. Money I'd carefully put away during 32 years of working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Miami, sitting at the same desk, doing the same careful work, putting aside every spare dollar I could. Money I'd been stashing away for my retirement for my final years specifically, so I wouldn't ever become a burden to Nicole or to anyone else. But when I saw my daughter like that, broken and hopeless at 45, I knew in my heart that money had a much more important purpose than making my own old age comfortable. I found this small acreage on the outskirts of Miami in the Redland area, a rural farming community that still existed somehow in the midst of the urban sprawl. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it was absolutely beautiful in its simplicity. 5 acres of land with mature mango trees, avocado trees, and citrus trees that produced fruit almost year-round. A modest 3-bedroom house that needed some work but had good bones and character. A large country kitchen with windows overlooking the back garden where you could see birds and butterflies. The property cost exactly $5,800, which meant I had to take out a small loan for $8,000 from the bank to cover the closing costs and immediate repairs. But I didn't care about the debt or the risk. When I saw Nicole's face the day I took her to see it and handed her the keys, I knew without any doubt that I had made the right decision. "It's mine, Mom," she asked with her eyes welling up with tears of disbelief. "Is it really mine, truly mine, yours and no one else's?" I told her, firmly holding her tight against me. "A place where you can start completely fresh, where no one will ever make you feel less than you are worth again." We cried together that day, standing in the driveway. We cried with happiness, with hope, with that overwhelming feeling that things were finally going to get better after so many years of darkness and pain. I imagined Nicole living there peacefully in her own space, tending her garden under the Florida sun, maybe starting a small home baking business like she'd always dreamed about, but never had the courage or support to try. I imagined her finding peace after 19 years of psychological torture. I never imagined this nightmare. I never imagined that 7 months later she would meet Devin at a Publix grocery store in the produce section, that he would seem so charming at first, so attentive and kind, so completely different from her abusive ex-husband. I never imagined they would marry so quickly, barely 5 months after their first conversation over avocados, and I certainly never imagined in my worst nightmares that he would bring this entire toxic family with him, a family that had now turned my daughter's safe haven into their personal vacation resort where she was treated like unpaid staff. "Cheryl, what a surprise," Denise said when she finally noticed me standing at the kitchen entrance, her voice dripping with fake sweetness while her eyes remained ice-cold and calculating. "We didn't know you were coming by today. Nobody told us to expect you. It's my daughter's property," I said as calmly as I could manage, though I was absolutely boiling inside with rage. "I can come whenever I like without asking permission from anyone." Denise smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile or a welcoming smile. It was the smile of someone who believes they have already won some invisible battle, who has everything under their control, and enjoys watching others realize they've lost. Of course," she said, rising from the couch with the confidence of someone who genuinely feels they own the place, walking toward me slowly. "Although technically it now belongs to your daughter and my son together. They are married after all, Cheryl. What belongs to one spouse belongs to the other spouse. That's how marriage works." I felt my skin prickle with warning signals, every instinct I had screaming that this woman was dangerous. Denise knew exactly what she was doing with her words. She knew exactly which buttons to push to make me feel like an outsider in the property I had purchased with my own life savings. "Nicole," I called out, not taking my eyes off Denise for even a second. "Come here right now, please." My daughter looked up from the sink where she'd been scrubbing the same pan for who knows how long. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked at me with a desperate mixture of relief and fear, as if my presence might somehow save her but also might make the whole terrible situation even worse. "I'm busy, Mom," she said, her voice cracking with exhaustion, and something else, something that sounded like defeat. "I need to finish cleaning up all the breakfast dishes. There are so many, and everyone keeps using more." "Let someone else clean those dishes," I said firmly, my voice stronger than I felt inside. "Come here to me right now." Denise actually laughed out loud. She laughed directly in my face, as if I had just told the funniest joke she'd ever heard in her entire life. "Oh, Cheryl, don't be so dramatic about everything. Nicole is just helping out with the household chores like any good wife should. We're all family here, right? Families help each other out. That's what family means." I looked around the entire room, taking in the full scene with fresh eyes and mounting horror. Devin's 2 sisters, Taylor and Morgan, were draped over my daughter's sofa like lazy cats watching some reality show on TV, with their feet propped up disrespectfully on Nicole's coffee table. The brother Derek was outside in the backyard, smoking a cigarette without a care in the world, while his wife scrolled through her phone, completely ignoring her children. Those two kids had left a trail of toys, food crumbs, and spilled juice all over the floor, and not a single adult was lifting a finger to help clean any of it up or control the chaos. "How long have all of you been staying here?" I asked, trying desperately to keep my composure, even though with every passing second, the pressure in my chest was increasing. 3 weeks, Denise replied, as if it were the most normal and reasonable thing in the world. "And we'll be staying for the whole summer. Devin invited us all. He said there's plenty of room here, and why have a big country home if you're not going to share it with family who want to enjoy it 3 whole weeks?" My daughter had been living this absolute hell for 3 solid weeks and hadn't said a single word to me about it, hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't asked for help. "And where is Devin right now?" I asked, trying to maintain control of my voice and my temper. "He went out with his father to look at some land they're thinking about investing in together," Denise replied, settling back onto the sofa as if it were her personal throne in her personal castle. "They'll be back around lunchtime. Speaking of which, Nicole, it's almost 11 o'clock now. You really should start preparing something substantial for lunch. You know how my son gets irritable if he doesn't eat on time. He doesn't like waiting for his meals." Nicole nodded silently and started pulling pots and pans out of the cabinet with mechanical movements like a robot that had been programmed to obey without question or thought. Watching my daughter like this, watching her reduced to this shadow of herself, broke something fundamental in my heart. This was not the woman I had raised with so much care and love. This was not the strong woman who had survived 19 years of psychological abuse from her first husband and had somehow found the courage to leave and start over. This was not my Nicole. I walked over to her and gently touched her arm to get her attention. She actually flinched as if my touch had physically burned her, as if she'd forgotten what kindness felt like. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run absolutely cold in my veins. She had red marks on both her wrists, as if she'd been scrubbing dishes and floors for hours and hours without any break. Her hands were cracked and swollen, the skin dry and damaged. Her nails, which she had always kept so perfectly manicured and pretty, were broken down to the quick and had dirt embedded under them. "Nicole, I need to talk to you," I said in the lowest voice I could manage. "Alone. Right now. In private? Why don't you just sit down here with us for a while?" Cheryl Taylor interrupted from the sofa, not even bothering to look away from the television. "We're watching a really entertaining show. Nicole, can you bring your mother some coffee while you're in there? Make it with cream and sugar. I didn't come here to watch television with you people," I replied, not even glancing in her direction. "I came specifically to talk to my daughter, and we're going to talk right now whether you like it or not." I took Nicole's arm firmly but gently and guided her toward the back door that led to the garden. Denise stood up from the couch immediately, her face showing the first signs of actual concern that her control might be slipping. "Where do you think you're going with her?" she asked with an edge to her voice. "We're just going outside to talk privately," I said without stopping or looking back. "Family business. You know how it is." We walked out into the yard where the mango trees provided some shade from the intense Miami sun. The moment we were far enough from the house that they couldn't hear us clearly, Nicole collapsed against me and started sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry you had to see this. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to be disappointed in me again. Baby, why didn't you call me?" I asked, holding her tight and feeling my heart break into pieces. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening here? You've been living like a prisoner in your own home for 3 weeks. "Because I was ashamed," Nicole whispered, "because I thought I could handle it. Because Devin kept saying it was just temporary, that they'd leave soon, that I just needed to be patient and welcoming because family is important to him." "How did this even start?" I asked. "Tell me everything from the beginning." Nicole wiped her eyes with the back of her damaged hands. "They showed up 2 days after Devin and I got back from our honeymoon. Just his mother at first. She said she wanted to spend some quality time getting to know me better, that she'd stay for a few days. Then his sisters came because they wanted to see the property. Then Derek and his family showed up because they were having problems at their apartment and needed a place to stay temporarily. And Devin, he just kept saying yes to everyone. He couldn't say no to his family. And the work, I asked, all this cleaning and cooking and serving, how did that become your responsibility alone? It just happened gradually, Nicole said, her voice small and defeated. At first I was just being a good hostess, making meals, keeping things tidy. But then they started expecting it, demanding it. If I sat down to rest, Denise would make comments about lazy wives. If the food wasn't ready exactly when they wanted it, they'd complain to Devin that I wasn't taking care of his family properly. And Devin, what does he say when they treat you like this? He doesn't see it, Nicole said, fresh tears flowing. Or he doesn't want to see it. When I try to talk to him about it, his mother always interrupts, or he says I'm being too sensitive. He says family is just direct and honest, that I'm not used to a close family because I was an only child. He makes me feel like I'm the problem, like I'm the one being difficult and ungrateful. This is abuse, Nicole, I said firmly, making her look directly at me. This is exactly what your first husband did, just in a different form. They're isolating you, breaking you down, making you doubt your own reality. And you're letting them do it in the house I bought specifically to give you freedom and safety. What can I do, Mom? She asked desperately. I love Devin. When it's just the two of us, he's wonderful. He's kind and attentive and everything I dreamed of. It's only when his family is around that everything falls apart. Then they need to leave, I said. Today. Right now. This is your house, not theirs. You have every right to ask them to go. I can't do that, Nicole said, panic filling her eyes. Devin would never forgive me. His family is everything to him. If I make him choose between them and me, I'll lose. Then he doesn't deserve you, I said bluntly. Any man who would let his family treat his wife like a servant in her own home doesn't deserve to be married to you. Before Nicole could respond, we heard a vehicle pulling into the driveway. Devin's truck. I could see him and his father getting out, both of them laughing about something. Devin was a tall man, handsome, with an easy smile that I'd found charming when I first met him. Now all I could see was a man who'd allowed his family to destroy my daughter's peace. Please don't make a scene, Mom, Nicole begged, gripping my arm. Please, let me handle this my own way. I've already made a scene by my presence, I said. And I'm not leaving until we sort this out. We walked back toward the house. Devin saw us and waved, his smile bright and apparently genuine. Cheryl, what a nice surprise, he called out. Nicole didn't tell me you were coming by today. I didn't tell Nicole either, I said. I just decided to visit my daughter in the home I purchased for her. Is that a problem? Of course not, Devin said, though something flickered across his face, maybe confusion or concern. You're always welcome here. He leaned down to kiss Nicole on the cheek, but I saw her stiffen at his touch. Devin, we need to talk, I said directly. About your family and how long they've been staying here. They're just visiting for the summer, Devin said casually, like it was nothing. It's nice having everyone together. The house is big enough for all of us. For all of you except Nicole, apparently, I said. She's been playing servant to 9 people for 3 weeks, while you've been out looking at investment properties with your father. Devin's expression changed, becoming defensive. My family helps around the house, he said. We all pitch in. That's a lie, and you know it, I said, my patience finally snapping completely. I've been here for 2 hours, and I've watched your mother, your sisters, your brother, and his entire family sit around being waited on by my daughter like she's their personal maid. She has marks on her wrists from scrubbing your family's dishes. She has circles under her eyes because she's exhausted. And you're telling me everyone pitches in? You're exaggerating, Cheryl, Devin said, but I could see doubt creeping into his expression. My mother can be a little particular about things, but that's just how she is. Nicole knows that. Ask your wife if I'm exaggerating, I challenged him. Go ahead. Ask Nicole right now if she's happy with this living situation. Devin looked at Nicole, really looked at her, for what seemed like the first time in weeks. He saw the exhaustion, the tears, the defeat in her posture. Baby, is something wrong? He asked, his voice softer. Why didn't you tell me you were upset? Because every time I try to talk to you about it, your mother interrupts, or you tell me I'm being too sensitive, Nicole said, her voice shaking but growing stronger with each word. Because your family has taken over our home, and I've spent 3 weeks cooking and cleaning and serving them while being treated like I don't matter at all. Because I'm exhausted and miserable, and this isn't what I thought marriage to you would be like. Devin looked genuinely shocked, as if this information was completely new to him despite having lived in the same house the entire time. I had no idea you felt this way, he said. Why didn't you just tell me directly? I tried, Nicole said, her voice breaking. But you never seemed to hear me. Your family always comes first. Before Devon could respond, Denise appeared in the doorway, her face tight with anger barely concealed behind a forced smile. "Is everything all right out here?" she called out. "Devon, your lunch is getting cold. We're having a private family conversation," I said to her firmly. "This doesn't concern you right now." "I'm his mother," Denise shot back, walking toward us with determined steps. "Everything that concerns my son concerns me." "That's exactly the problem," I said, turning to face her directly. "You think everything about Devon's life is your business, including his marriage. But this is his wife's home purchased with my money, and your son needs to decide right now whether he's going to be a husband or remain a child who lets his mother run his life." "How dare you speak to me that way," Denise said, her face flushing with rage. "I raised my son to be a good man with strong family values. Unlike some people, we believe in taking care of family, in staying close, in supporting each other. Supporting each other shouldn't mean one person does all the work while everyone else relaxes," I replied. "That's not family. That's exploitation." "You're just bitter because you're alone," Denise spat out. "You're a lonely old woman who can't stand to see her daughter happy with a real family who actually cares about being together." "That's enough," Devon said suddenly, his voice loud and firm in a way I hadn't heard before. "Mom, that's completely out of line. Don't you dare speak to Cheryl that way." "Oh, so now you're defending her over your own mother," Denise said, her voice rising to a near shriek. "I raised you better than this, Devon. I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me, by taking the side of this woman who's trying to poison your wife against us." "She's not poisoning anyone," Devon said, and I could see something shifting in his expression, like he was finally seeing clearly for the first time. "She's pointing out what I should have noticed weeks ago." "Nicole, is it true? Have you been doing all the cooking and cleaning for everyone?" "Yes," Nicole whispered. "Every meal, every dish, every mess. For 3 straight weeks. While your sisters watch TV and your mother criticizes everything I do and your brother's kids destroy the house and nobody helps with anything. I felt like I was going to have a breakdown if it continued much longer." Devon looked back at the house where I could see Taylor and Morgan watching the drama unfold through the window. He looked at his mother's furious face. He looked at Nicole's exhausted, tear-stained face. And I saw the moment something clicked into place in his mind. "I need everyone to leave," Devon said quietly but firmly. What Denise said, clearly not believing what she'd just heard. "Everyone needs to pack up and leave today," Devon repeated, his voice growing stronger. "This is Nicole's house, our house, and I've let you all turn it into something it was never meant to be." "We're family, Devon," Denise said, her voice suddenly pleading. "You can't just throw us out. We came here because you invited us." "I invited you for a visit, not to move in for the entire summer and treat my wife like a servant," Devon said. "I was blind to what was happening, but I'm not blind anymore. I want everyone gone by this evening." "You're making a huge mistake," Denise warned, her voice turning cold and threatening. "If you choose her over your family, there will be consequences. You won't be welcome in our lives anymore." "Then that's a choice you're making, not me," Devon said. "I'm choosing my wife, which is what I should have done from the beginning. Nicole is my family now. You're all welcome to visit occasionally with advance notice and respectful behavior, but this situation ends today." Denise stared at her son for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if he was serious or if she could manipulate him back under her control. When she saw the determination in his face, something ugly twisted her features. "Fine," she said coldly. "We'll leave. But don't come crying to us when your marriage falls apart because you married a weak woman who can't handle a little hard work and who turns you against your own blood." "Get off this property," I said, my voice like steel. "You have 2 hours to pack and leave, and if you're not gone by then, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Denise said. "This is my son's house." "It's my daughter's house and I have the deed to prove it," I said. "Devon may live here as her husband, but legally this property belongs to Nicole Spencer, and as her mother I have every right to protect her from people who abuse her hospitality. Now get your things and get out." Denise looked like she wanted to argue further, but Devon stepped forward to stand beside Nicole, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Mom, please just go," he said quietly. "We all need some space right now. This has gotten completely out of control and I need time with my wife to fix what I've let happen." The next 2 hours were chaos. Denise stormed through the house, ordering everyone to pack, her voice shrill with rage and humiliation. Taylor and Morgan complained loudly about being thrown out, making passive-aggressive comments about ungrateful daughters-in-law and weak men who couldn't stand up to interfering mothers-in-law. Derek and his wife moved slowly, clearly hoping Devin would change his mind if they delayed long enough. The children cried and threw tantrums about leaving. Through it all, I stayed. I sat in the kitchen with Nicole holding her hand, while Devin supervised the exodus of his family. I watched him stand firm, even when his mother tried multiple times to pull him aside for private conversations that I suspected were attempts at manipulation. I saw him shake his head repeatedly, saw him point toward the door, saw him slowly transform from a man caught between two worlds into a husband who was finally protecting his wife. When the last vehicle finally pulled out of the driveway loaded with suitcases and angry family members, the silence that fell over the house was almost deafening. Nicole stood at the window watching them leave, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of relief or sadness or simply exhaustion from 3 weeks of hell. Devin came back inside looking drained and pale, like he'd just fought the hardest battle of his life. "I think I need to lie down," Nicole said softly. "I haven't slept properly in so long." "Go rest, baby," I told her. "I'll stay here and clean up. You've done enough." After Nicole disappeared into the bedroom, Devin and I were left alone in the kitchen. He sat down heavily at the table and put his head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice muffled. "I'm so sorry I let it get this far. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected her." "Yes, you should have," I said, not sugarcoating anything. "Your wife was being abused in her own home for 3 weeks while you were oblivious or willfully blind. That's not acceptable, Devin. But you did the right thing today by making them leave. That took courage, considering how much control your mother clearly has over you. I know she can be difficult," Devin said, looking up at me with genuine remorse in his eyes. "I've always known that. But she's my mother, and she raised me alone after my father left when I was young. She sacrificed a lot for us kids. I felt obligated to her, grateful to her. I didn't want to seem ungrateful by setting boundaries." "There's a difference between being grateful and allowing abuse," I said firmly. "Your mother didn't come here to visit. She came here to establish dominance, to show Nicole who really controls your life. And your siblings followed her lead because that's the family dynamic you all accept as normal." "But it's not normal, Devin. It's toxic." "What do I do now?" he asked. "How do I fix this with Nicole?" "You start by believing her when she tells you something is wrong," I said. "You start by making her your first priority instead of trying to please everyone. You start by maintaining the boundaries you just set today, even when your mother tries to guilt you back into the old patterns. And she will try, Devin. This isn't over. She's going to call you, text you, show up unexpectedly. She's going to test whether you really meant what you said today." "I know," Devin said quietly. I could see it in her eyes when she left. "She thinks this is temporary, that she can wait me out and things will go back to how they were." "Then you need to prove her wrong," I said. "For Nicole's sake and for your marriage. Because if you let them come back and treat her this way again, you will lose her. And you'll deserve to lose her." "I understand," Devin said. "I promise you, Cheryl, I won't let this happen again." After our conversation, I spent the rest of the afternoon helping to restore some order to the house. I washed dishes that had been piling up. I cleaned the mess Derek's children had left throughout the living room. I found food in the refrigerator that had gone bad because no one had bothered to manage groceries properly during the 3-week invasion. When Nicole finally emerged from the bedroom several hours later, the house looked more like the peaceful sanctuary it was supposed to be. She looked better after the rest, though the exhaustion was still evident in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom," she said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you for coming today. Thank you for standing up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself." "That's what mothers do," I said simply. "We protect our children even when they're grown, even when they think they don't need protection anymore." "I'm afraid they'll come back," Nicole admitted. "I'm afraid Devin will change his mind or his mother will manipulate him into letting them return." "That's a legitimate concern," I said honestly. "Which is why you need to have a serious conversation with your husband about permanent boundaries, about what you will and won't accept in your marriage. Devin needs to understand that choosing you isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice he has to keep making." We talked for hours that evening, just the three of us. Devin apologized repeatedly to Nicole, acknowledging everything he'd failed to see and failed to do. Nicole explained how trapped and hopeless she'd felt, how the situation had triggered all her trauma from her first marriage, how she'd started to wonder if she was somehow the problem since two different husbands seemed unable to prioritize her well-being. And I watched them begin to rebuild something that had been damaged, maybe not broken beyond repair but definitely cracked and needing serious attention. Before I left that night to drive back to my apartment in Miami, I pulled Devin aside one more time. "Your mother is going to test you," I warned him again. "Probably within the next few days. She's going to call with some emergency or some guilt trip or some manipulation. And how you respond to that will determine whether your marriage survives." "I won't let her back in," Devin promised. "I mean it, Cheryl." I finally see what I was doing, how I was prioritizing my guilt and obligation to her over my commitment to my wife. "That stops now." "Good," I said. Because Nicole has been through hell twice in her life. Once with a husband who abused her psychologically for 19 years, and now almost again with a husband who allowed his family to abuse her. She deserves better. She deserves a partner who protects her, not one who throws her to the wolves. "I know," Devin said. "And I'm going to be that partner from now on. I'm going to prove to her that choosing to marry me wasn't another mistake." I drove home that night feeling cautiously hopeful but also deeply worried. I'd seen too many men make promises they couldn't keep when it came to standing up to controlling mothers. I'd seen too many women trapped in marriages where they were always second place to their husband's family of origin. Time would tell if Devin really meant what he said, or if the pull of his mother's manipulation would prove stronger than his commitment to his wife. The next morning I called Nicole to check on her. She sounded better, more rested, more like herself. "Devin and I talked for a long time last night after you left," she told me. "Really talked maybe for the first time since we got married." He admitted he'd been in denial about how bad things had gotten. He said he was embarrassed that he'd let his family treat me that way. "Do you believe him?" I asked. "Do you think he's really going to change?" "I want to believe him," Nicole said. "I really do. But I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared this is just temporary and that in a few weeks or months we'll be right back where we started." "Then you need to watch his actions, not just his words," I told her. "Anyone can apologize and make promises. What matters is whether he follows through when it gets difficult, and it will get difficult when his mother starts applying pressure." I didn't have to wait long to be proven right. 3 days after the confrontation, Devin's phone started ringing constantly. His mother called at least 10 times that first day. When he didn't answer, she started texting, sending long messages about how hurt she was, how betrayed she felt, how she couldn't believe her own son would turn on his family for a woman he barely knew. Devin showed the messages to Nicole, which I thought was a good sign. At least he was being transparent instead of hiding the communication. "How are you handling it?" I asked him when I called to check in. "It's hard," Devin admitted. "I feel guilty every time I see her name on my phone. She's using every manipulation tactic she knows, talking about all the sacrifices she made, reminding me of every difficult moment in my childhood when she was there for me. But I'm not responding. I'm holding firm." "Good," I said, "because that guilt you're feeling is exactly what she's counting on. She's betting that your sense of obligation to her will eventually override your commitment to your wife." On the 5th day, Denise changed tactics. She showed up at the property unannounced, claiming she'd left some important items behind and needed to retrieve them. Devin called me immediately, unsure how to handle it. "Don't let her in the house," I advised. "If she really left something, have her wait outside while you look for it. But don't give her access to Nicole or to your home. She'll use any opening you give her to worm her way back in." Devin followed my advice. He met his mother outside, listened to her tearful speech about family and forgiveness, and then firmly told her she needed to call before visiting in the future and that she wasn't welcome to stay at the property anymore. According to Nicole, who watched from the window, Denise's tears dried up immediately when she realized Devin wasn't going to cave. She left angry, shouting that he would regret choosing Nicole over his own blood. The harassment continued for 2 weeks. Phone calls at all hours, text messages ranging from guilt trips to outright threats. Taylor and Morgan started calling too, adding their voices to the campaign to make Devin feel like a traitor to the family. At one point, Derek showed up drunk, demanding to know why Devin was being so cruel to their mother who had done nothing wrong. Through it all, Devin held firm. He blocked numbers when necessary. He kept Nicole informed of every contact. He stopped answering calls from family members, entirely communicating only through brief texts that maintained his boundaries. "I'm proud of you," I told him during one of my visits. "I know this isn't easy." "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," Devin admitted. "Harder than I ever imagined. But every day I see Nicole getting stronger, more like herself, and I know I'm doing the right thing. The house feels peaceful now instead of chaotic. We're actually building a life together instead of just surviving." Nicole confirmed this when we had time alone. "He's different, Mom," she said with cautious hope in her voice. "He's really different. He asks me how I'm feeling. He helps with everything around the house. He talks to me about decisions instead of just making them. I'm starting to believe this might actually work." A month after the confrontation, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived for Devin, handwritten from his mother. He showed it to Nicole before opening it, which I thought showed his growth. "Should I even read it?" he asked her. "Or should I just throw it away?" "Read it," Nicole said. "But read it with me here so we can talk about it together if it's manipulative." The letter was surprisingly different from Denise's previous communications. It was several pages long, written in careful handwriting that suggested it had taken time and thought. In it, Denise acknowledged, perhaps for the first time in her life, that she had overstepped boundaries. She admitted that she'd treated Nicole poorly, that she'd taken advantage of their hospitality, that she'd failed to respect their marriage. The apology seemed genuine, though I remained skeptical when Nicole called to tell me about it. "Words are easy," I reminded her. "What matters is whether she backs them up with changed behavior." "I know," Nicole said. "Devin and I talked about it for hours. We're not rushing to reconcile. We told her we appreciate the letter but that we need time, that if she's serious about changing, she'll respect our need for space." "And she agreed?" I asked, surprised. "She said she understood," Nicole replied. "She said she's been going to therapy, working on understanding why she needs so much control over Devin's life. She specifically apologized to me for every cruel thing she said and did. She acknowledged she was trying to drive us apart because she felt threatened by our relationship. Time will tell if she means it," I said. "Manipulators can fake repentance for a while, but they can't sustain it forever. Eventually, their true nature shows through again." "That's why we're being careful," Devin said, taking the phone from Nicole. "We're not cutting her off completely, but we're maintaining strict boundaries, short visits in neutral locations. No staying at our house. No last-minute drop-ins. And if she violates those boundaries even once we're done." "That sounds reasonable," I said, though I still had my doubts about whether Denise's change was genuine or just another manipulation strategy. 2 months after the original confrontation, Nicole invited me to the property for Sunday lunch. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize the place. The transformation was remarkable and heartwarming. They had planted new flowers throughout the garden, bright hibiscus and bougainvillea, that thrived in the Florida heat. The exterior walls had been freshly painted a cheerful butter yellow that seemed to glow in the sunlight. There were new curtains on all the windows, light and airy fabric that let in natural light. The entire house smelled clean and fresh, like a true home instead of a battleground. "Do you like it?" Nicole asked with a radiant smile I hadn't seen on her face in years, not since before her first marriage fell apart. "Devin and I have been working on every room. We wanted the house to feel completely new, free from all the bad memories of what happened. It's absolutely beautiful," I said honestly, feeling tears prick my eyes. "It feels like a real home now, like a place where people are loved and respected." Devin came out from the kitchen, carrying a tray with fresh lemonade and homemade cookies. He looked different, too, more relaxed, more present in his own life. His smile when he looked at Nicole was genuine and tender. "Cheryl, thanks so much for coming," he said, giving me a warm hug. "Nicole has been excited all week about showing you everything we've accomplished." We sat in the backyard under the shade of a mature mango tree, the fruit hanging heavy on the branches. Nicole told me enthusiastically about her plans to finally start her home-based baking business, something she had dreamed about for decades but never had the confidence or support to pursue. Devin had surprised her by building a professional quality outdoor oven, specifically designed for her baking, positioned perfectly in a covered area of the patio. "He's been so supportive," Nicole said, reaching over to squeeze Devin's hand. He helped me design business cards, set up a social media page, everything. I already have 3 orders for next weekend. I'm terrified and excited at the same time. You're going to be amazing, I told her, my heart swelling with pride. You've always been a talented baker. Now you finally have the space and support to turn it into something real. And your mother? I asked eventually, the question that had been hovering in the air since I arrived. How is that situation developing? Devin sighed, a sound of exhaustion mixed with cautious hope. She's been trying, he said. She sent another letter last week, even more detailed than the first one. She's been seeing a therapist twice a week, and apparently working on what the therapist calls enmeshment issues, understanding why she has such trouble letting me be independent. And what did you both decide? I asked, looking between them. We wrote back, Nicole said. We told her we appreciated her efforts and her continued apologies, but that we still need more time before we're ready for any face-to-face contact. We said that when we are ready we could meet in a neutral place like a restaurant for a short visit, but that she would never be welcome to stay at our house again unless she demonstrates through actions, not just words, that she's genuinely changed. And she accepted that, Devin added. She didn't argue or try to guilt-trip us. She just said she understood and that she would wait as long as necessary, that she would do whatever it takes to rebuild our trust. She said she realizes now that she almost destroyed my marriage and she doesn't want to make that mistake again. We'll see, I said, still maintaining my skepticism. Time will tell whether she's sincere or just playing a longer manipulation game. I know, Devin nodded seriously. That's exactly why we're in no rush. Nicole is my absolute priority now. And if my mother can't respect that permanently, not just temporarily, then she'll have to live with the consequences of limited or no contact with us. We spent the rest of that beautiful afternoon eating Nicole's incredible cooking, laughing together, sharing stories about everything and nothing. It was the first time in what felt like forever that I had seen my daughter truly happy, truly at peace with her life and her choices. And seeing Devin look at her with such protective love, with such genuine attention and care, gave me real hope that maybe this marriage could not only survive, but actually thrive. When I was preparing to leave as the sun began to set, Nicole stopped me on the front porch and took both my hands in hers. Mom, she said, her eyes glistening with emotion, I've never properly thanked you for what you did that day. For showing up when I couldn't ask for help. For defending me when I was too broken down to defend myself, for standing up to an entire family on my behalf. You don't need to thank me, I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. That's what mothers do for their daughters. We protect them even when they're grown adults who think they should handle everything alone. But not all mothers do that, Nicole insisted, her voice thick with gratitude. So many women your age would have stayed out of it. They would have said it's not their business, that married daughters need to handle their own problems, that interfering would only make things worse. But you didn't care about any of that. You saw I was drowning, and you threw me a lifeline, even though it was risky, even though Devin could have turned against me, even though you could have made everything worse. But you did it anyway, because you knew it was right. I felt tears stinging my eyes as I held my daughter close. You are my child, I said simply, but with every ounce of feeling in my heart. And no one, absolutely no one, has the right to treat you the way Devin's family treated you. If I hadn't intervened when I did, if I had just stayed quiet and let you continue suffering in that situation, I never would have been able to forgive myself. We hugged tightly on that porch for a long moment, mother and daughter, both of us survivors of different storms, but united by an unbreakable bond of love that had carried us through the worst moments of our lives. I love you, Mom, Nicole whispered against my shoulder. I love you too, baby, I replied, always and forever, no matter what. I drove back to Miami as the sun set over the Florida landscape, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple. I thought about everything that had happened over the past 2 months, how a situation that had seemed completely hopeless had somehow found its way to resolution, how my daughter had recovered her voice, her strength, her sense of self-worth, how her home had been transformed from a prison back into a sanctuary. I didn't know what would ultimately happen with Denise, whether her apparent change was genuine or whether she would eventually revert to her true, manipulative nature. But honestly, that didn't matter as much anymore, because now Nicole knew how to defend herself. Devin knew how to protect her and prioritize her. And I knew I had done the right thing by intervening when I did, even though it had been risky and confrontational. There are moments in life when love means being kind and patient and understanding. And there are moments when love means being fierce and unbreakable and willing to fight. That Saturday morning when I'd arrived at the property and found Nicole weeping in the kitchen, I had been both. I had been the mother my daughter desperately needed in her darkest moment. And as I drove through the illuminated streets of Miami with the soft sound of music filling the silence in my car, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in a very long time: pride. Deep, overwhelming pride in myself, in my daughter, in the strong woman I had raised, despite all the challenges and setbacks life had thrown at us both. Because at the end of the day, that's what mothers do. We teach our daughters to be strong. We show them through our own example that they have inherent worth, that they deserve respect, that no relationship is worth having if it comes at the expense of their dignity and well-being. And when our daughters forget those crucial lessons, when life beats them down so hard that they temporarily lose sight of who they really are, we are there to remind them. We are there to tell them firmly and lovingly, get up. You are so much stronger than you think you are. And I will stand beside you while you remember how to fight for yourself. Because that is what it truly means to be a mother. It's not just about giving life. It's about teaching how to live that life with dignity and self-respect. It's about showing by example that there are battles absolutely worth fighting. It's about being the shield when your children don't have the strength to defend themselves, and being the mirror that reflects back to them who they truly are when the world tries to make them forget. I arrived at my small apartment that night, feeling every one of my 67 years in my tired bones, but also feeling something younger and more vital pulsing through me. I had spent nearly all my retirement savings on that property for Nicole. I had taken on debt in my golden years. I had risked my relationship with my daughter's husband by confronting his family so aggressively. I had faced down an entire hostile family without backing down or apologizing. And I would do every single bit of it again without a moment's hesitation. Because that house, that small acreage I had purchased with money, earned through 32 years of careful bookkeeping work, was not just a piece of property with a deed and a mortgage. It was a symbol of something much more important. It was a symbol of independence, of security, of a woman's fundamental right to have something that belongs to her that no one can take away. And when that security had been threatened, when that refuge had been transformed into a prison, I had done what any mother should do for her daughter. I had given her back her home. I had given her back her voice. I had given her back her life. And in the process, I had taught her perhaps the most important lesson of all, a lesson I hoped she would carry with her for the rest of her days. That no matter your age, no matter how many times you have fallen or failed, no matter how beaten down you feel, you always have the right and the power to stand up and say no more. Not to me. Not in my house. Not in my life. That night before going to sleep, I received one last message from Nicole. It was a photo of her and Devin in the backyard, embracing each other genuinely, both of them smiling with real happiness that reached their eyes. The mango tree was visible behind them, heavy with fruit. The new yellow paint glowed warmly in the evening light. And below the photo were just 3 simple words that meant everything. Thank you for everything. I smiled, saved the photo, to look at whenever I needed, reminding of why I'd made the choices I'd made, put my phone away on the nightstand and closed my eyes. I fell asleep knowing with absolute certainty that my daughter was finally okay, that her house was truly hers again, that her life belonged to her and not to people who wanted to control and diminish her. And I knew that if she ever needed me again, if Devin ever faltered in his commitment, or if his family ever tried to worm their way back in, I would be there in a heartbeat. I would drive those 2 hours from Miami without hesitation. I would be ready to fight again if necessary. Because that's what mothers do for their daughters. We don't give up on them. We don't back down when they need us. And we never ever let anyone hurt our children without facing consequences. Never. 6 months after that terrible Saturday morning when I'd found Nicole in tears, life had settled into something that looked remarkably like happiness. Nicole's baking business was thriving beyond her wildest expectations. She had a waiting list of customers who wanted her custom cakes and pastries. She'd been featured in a local Miami food blog. She was making enough money to not only contribute to the household expenses, but to start her own savings account, something she'd never had in her entire adult life. Devon had been promoted at his job and was using the extra income to make further improvements to the property. They'd installed solar panels to reduce electricity costs. They'd expanded the garden and were selling fresh produce at a local farmer's market on weekends. They were building a life together, based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. And Denise, true to her word, had maintained appropriate boundaries. She'd met with them twice in neutral locations, brief coffee meetings where she'd been respectful and appropriate. She'd sent birthday cards with thoughtful messages but no manipulation. She'd called occasionally but accepted when Devon said they were busy and couldn't talk. Was she genuinely changed or just playing a very long game? I still didn't know for certain. But what I did know was that Devon remained vigilant, that he continued to prioritize Nicole, that the boundaries they'd established remained firm, and that was enough for now. On a beautiful Sunday morning in late spring, almost exactly 1 year after I'd bought the property for Nicole, they invited me to a special celebration. When I arrived, I found the yard decorated with strings of lights and fresh flowers. There was a new wooden sign hanging near the front door that read, Nicole's Baking Company, Est. 2024, with a beautiful painted design of a cake and rolling pin. Surprise, Nicole said, beaming as she led me to the backyard, where a small group had gathered. There were neighbors I'd met on previous visits, friends Nicole had made through her baking business, and even a few of Devon's co-workers who'd become genuine friends to both of them. We're celebrating 1 year in our home, Devon explained, his arm around Nicole's waist. 1 year of building the life we should have been building from the beginning. And we wanted you here, Mom, because none of this would exist without you, Nicole added, her eyes shining with happy tears. Not just the house, but everything. You saved me. You taught me I deserved better. You showed me what real love looks like, the kind that protects instead of controls. I felt my throat tighten with emotion as I looked around at what my daughter had built from the ashes of 2 failed relationships, a thriving business, a true partnership with a man who'd learned to choose her over his toxic family patterns, a home that radiated peace and joy instead of tension and fear, a life that was authentically hers. As the afternoon unfolded with food and laughter and genuine connection, I found myself thinking about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The 32 years I'd spent working as a bookkeeper, carefully saving every dollar I could. The decision to spend my entire retirement fund on this property. The risk I'd taken in confronting Devon's family so aggressively. The fear I'd felt that I might be making things worse instead of better. All of it had led to this. To Nicole, standing in her own backyard, confident and radiant, surrounded by people who valued and respected her. To Devon, looking at his wife with genuine love and admiration. To a home that felt like a sanctuary instead of a prison. At one point during the celebration, Nicole pulled me aside. I have something to tell you, she said, her face glowing with a secret she could barely contain. Devon and I have been talking about the future. About maybe starting a family. I'm 45, so we know it might not happen naturally, but we're going to try. And if it doesn't work out, we might look into adoption. We want to raise a child in this home, surrounded by love and respect, and all the things I didn't have in my first marriage. My heart swelled so large I thought it might burst right out of my chest. Oh, baby, I said, hugging her tightly. That would be wonderful. You would be an incredible mother. You've survived so much. You've learned so hard lessons. Any child would be blessed to have you. And Devon too, Nicole added. He's going to be an amazing father. He's learned from his family's mistakes. He knows what not to do, how not to let controlling people damage the people you love. We're going to break those cycles and create something completely different. As the sun began to set over the property, painting everything in that magical golden light that only happens in Florida, Devon stood up to make a toast. Everyone gathered around as he raised his glass. To Cheryl, he said, looking directly at me with genuine gratitude and respect. The woman who loved her daughter enough to risk everything to save her. The woman who spent her entire life savings to give Nicole a fresh start. The woman who stood up to my entire family and refused to back down until Nicole was safe. We owe you more than we can ever repay. To Cheryl, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. I felt tears streaming down my face as I looked at my daughter, at the life she'd reclaimed, at the future spreading out before her, full of possibility instead of pain. This is what it means to be a mother, I thought. Not the easy moments of joy when your children are small and sweet and adoring, but the hard moments when they need you to be strong, for them to fight, for them to show them through your actions that they deserve better than they've accepted. The moments when you have to risk everything, including your relationship with them, to save them from situations they can't escape on their own. We don't just give life, we teach how to live it with dignity. And when the people we love forget that lesson, we love them fiercely enough to remind them, no matter the cost. That is Cheryl Spencer's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city, what country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about mothers who fought for their daughters, about women who reclaimed their homes from toxic in-laws, and about the moment when staying silent is no longer an option. Real question. If you were Cheryl and you arrived at your daughter's house to find her crying in the kitchen, serving 9 people like a servant in the home you bought for her, what would you have done? Would you have confronted the in-laws immediately like she did? Would you have pulled your daughter aside first, or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know how you would respond to seeing your child being treated like hired help in their own home. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you deeply. Share it if you know someone whose in-laws have taken over their home, someone who's being treated like a servant by their spouse's family, someone who's too exhausted or broken down to stand up for themselves. Someone who needs to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, that your home is your sanctuary, and that no one has the right to turn it into their personal vacation resort while treating you like staff. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about mothers who refuse to watch their daughters suffer, about husbands who had to choose between toxic families and their wives, about homes that were reclaimed from controlling in-laws, and what happens when someone finally says enough is enough and means it with action. This story is about more than just one mother confronting her daughter's in-laws. It's about recognizing that abuse doesn't always look like violence. It's about understanding that being treated like a servant in your own home is absolutely abuse. It's about knowing that sometimes love means fighting for people who've temporarily lost the ability to fight for themselves. Thanks for watching. Remember, your home is your sanctuary, not a hotel for extended family who refuse to contribute. Being a good spouse doesn't mean allowing your partner's family to exploit and exhaust you. Marriage means your spouse becomes your first priority, not their mother or siblings. And if your husband or wife won't stand up for you against their toxic family, that's a fundamental problem in your marriage that needs to be addressed immediately. See you in the next video.